So you asked me again another question. So I appreciate you asking me. You were asking about emotional intelligence and how that affects a person, how that affects, is it men, women, either or? Well, when we talk about emotional intelligence, what are we talking about when we talk about emotional intelligence? Just that, emotional intelligence. But what does that really look like in the scheme of things? I'm sure. So when you talk about emotional intelligence, we're talking about being able to recognize not only your own emotions and how your emotions affect the way that you think and the way that you behave, but you also have enough emotional intelligence to know that if I feel a certain way and based on the way I feel, I usually think this way or I behave that way, then how true is that for other people? So to have emotional intelligence is not just a personal thing. Um, Excuse me, my lips was crusty earlier. Um, or felt dry. Excuse me, felt dry. But more than anything, it encompasses whether or not how I feel, not just how I feel about myself, but also how I feel about other people. And that goes for me, you, or anybody else. That's what emotional intelligence is. And emotional intelligence actually hinges around several points. One of those points would definitely be self awareness, because what would it be to have emotional intelligence, but you don't have any self awareness whatsoever? And what does that consist of? It consists of knowing your strengths, it consists of knowing your weaknesses, it consists of being conscious of your unconscious as well as your subconscious thoughts. How do you do that? Again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. As we've talked about other subjects before, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So, in order to understand yourself, you have to do what? Spend time with yourself. And if you don't spend that time with self, then there is no self awareness because you don't know anything about yourself. You just know enough to get you through, get by. And sometimes with individuals, let's just be honest, digging deep and talking about the things that happened in their past, the things that happens on a day to day, for some people can be very painful. So they don't want to talk about those things. They don't want to talk about what causes them harm when no one else is around or no one's looking. I remember working in the prison, and if you watch any prison show, jail show, uh, you'll see for yourself it's true to form. Many inmates will not allow you or other inmates in particular to see them cry. You know, for them, it's a form of weakness. And for many men, whether they're inmates or never been incarcerated a day in their life, for many men, in particular men, um, crying in front of another man is a very difficult thing to do. And for some men, I get it, they just can't do it. But then there's another group of men who they understand and they realize that it doesn't cause them to be less than a man because they cry. But all in all, spending time with yourself, understanding things that bring you pain, things that have hurt you in your past, and whatever challenges you might have right now is an essential part of growing past uh, current challenges you might have. But in order to do that, especially for emotional intelligence, self awareness is key. Now, along with that, matter of fact, maybe I should have said this earlier, there are 5 things I've observed in my career that would help with increasing emotional intelligence. First one, of course, would be, as I said, self awareness. Two would be self regulation. Self regulation is just that, self-regulation. To regulate oneself, to be able to balance your feelings out, to not fly off the hinges when you're angered, to be willing to listen, actively listen before giving a reaction, an explosive reaction that doesn't take into account the nuances of the situation, you know. And if you had a part to play in it, what part do you play in these changes that are going about? That's what self-regulation points at. It points at being in control of your emotions, knowing how to express those emotions, and feeling comfortable in doing so. But again, you're not going to get to self-regulation if you don't find comfort in the first step, which is being aware of yourself and knowing who you as an individual are, and being able to express who you are as an individual in such a way where you can continue to focus on improving your weaknesses as well as accentuating your strengths. That makes sense. But that process doesn't happen if you don't spend time discovering yourself. So first is self-awareness, then is self-regulation. Third would be motivation, because what can really happen if an individual is not properly motivated? And where does motivation come from? Of course, like many people, they think motivation always comes from the outside, and truthfully, yes, it does. But that's only half the truth, because we all know that motivation can come, it can be poured in from the outside, but what good is motivation coming from the outside if you don't allow that to be expressed in current real time? I could sit and I could give you a list. Matter of fact, I could be so definitive to the point that I go down the list, point, and I tell you everything you need to do, and you still may not do it. You could literally just look in my face and, oh, yeah. Like many of us do, right? Like many of us do. We look in each other's face and, yeah, we look at each other and we think, okay, let me just tell them what they want to hear. But it's not about what I want to hear. It's about what is going to get you up and moving. What is the motive to your action? And if your thoughts don't bring about feelings that excite you and get you, okay, they give you good feelings about starting the process. If we talked about you going to the gym and working out, right? Low key, we've done that before. I'm not, no shade, but we've talked about that before. And even in our conversations, and you and I are just, acquaintances, but, bottom line is, okay, we're friends. But nonetheless, even in those conversations, I can tell you how many sets with exercises work, or more so what exercises works, how many sets, how many reps, different techniques to increase the intensity of the workout. And if all of that doesn't motivate you, or you don't ask the right questions in order to inspire yourself. Inspire. Where's your inspiration coming from? Inspiration, and I'm going off of the prefix in, internal, inside. If you don't have inspiration that can motivate you, put a motor behind you and give you some motive to act, then what good is motivation? But that is another key part. As I went through 1, 2, and 3, these 5 tips, according to my experience, are essential with gaining emotional intelligence. So if you don't go back to step 1 and get some self-awareness, grow in self-awareness, grow with self-regulation, being able to control yourself in certain situations, then motivation, particularly internal motivation, is always going to be a bit of it's going to be an obstacle. Yeah, it's going to be an obstacle. Now, motivation is third. Fourth has to be empathy. And empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Because to be an emotionally intelligent person requires that you make a conscious decision to step outside of yourself, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and realize that what they're going through is theirs, not yours. How they present is them, not you. Far too often do we get in an emotionally charged situation, whether it's with our friends, whether it's with our families, our co-workers, or just people in society, where we have this idea that, oh, they should have did this, they should have did that, he should have known this, she should have known that. Is that really reality? Let's just be honest. Is that really reality? Because everyone lives a different lifestyle. Everybody's day-to-day interactions, engagements, totally different. So why should I put my point of view on you? So without empathy, without being able to put myself in your shoes, how am I being emotionally intelligent? Didn't I say at the beginning, when you deal with emotional intelligence, you don't only recognize your own emotions, your own and how they affect your thoughts and behaviors, but you also influence and recognize how your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors influence other people. So if you don't take in consideration someone else's life, what they're going through, you're going to dump your emotions on them, which in turn would more likely cause a conflict that does not have to take place with another human being whatsoever. And if you just took a little moment, had a bit more patience, and we definitely can get back into emotional intelligence in a different episode and explore that a bit more. But if you don't realize that other people live a different life, and consider in that moment wherever you might be offended, if you practice that a bit more, wow, just imagine how much stress you could just push off to the side. Just push it back. Dust your shoulders off. Keep it pushing. Because if you don't, look what's going to happen. You're going to be mad. You're going to be frustrated. That can affect so much. And God forbid, you lack empathy with an individual who you actually need in your life, in your corner, or could have been someone that you may have had a wonderful relationship with, whether professional or personal. So empathy is number 4 of these essential parts, essential keys, essential rules, tips to gaining emotional intelligence. The last one I'm going to share is going to be social skills, because what good is to have self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, and empathy if you cannot express or use those skills in a social environment that benefits you? You could be in a social environment that actually takes away from you more than benefits you. And that is something also to take into consideration. So I would definitely say keep in mind that emotional intelligence is not an easy task. It's not easy whatsoever, but one thing that we are responsible for is being responsible of ourselves, to the point that when we come into a situation, the only person in a situation we can control is ourselves. And if we don't master how to control ourselves, we're going to be in a world of trouble. And I believe many people will find themselves either less stressed, definitely less incarcerated, possibly, possibly, and just living more happy and fulfilled lives, if that makes sense. And like I said, I love to do a deeper dive into this subject, but yeah, those are my 5 tips for emotional intelligence, or gaining emotional intelligence. And I hope that helps.